Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I don't think that Andrew Cuomo doesn't believe this country's great. I think that he was trying to turn the president's slogan around on him and flubbed it. So and I think that he should.
So in 2010, when Andrew Cuomo used the slogan "Make New York Great Again,"
right.
What was that about?
Well, I have no idea. I'm not a close follower of his whole career. What I'm saying though is I do not think that Andrew Cuomo doesn't believe it's a great country. I think he tried to use a political tactic and turn the slogan around, and it didn't come out right. And I and my fellow Democrats believe this is an exceptional country. We believe in American exceptionalism. We disagree with the president's policies. And in terms of the country, a lot of politicians talk about problems. Donald Trump's inauguration address was all about American carnage. So I think that we can take a step back and say we're working towards a more perfect union.
I know you want to.
And I don't know. And Katie, I don't know. What do you think President Trump's referring to when he says "Make America Great Again"?
The economy and how terrible the economy was under Barack Obama for nearly a decade of my life. But I want to respond to. Look, I could give Andrew Cuomo the benefit of the doubt if Democrats didn't have a track record over recent years of being unpatriotic, putting up with NFL players kneeling for the national anthem.
That is not unpatriotic.
Hillary Clinton saying yesterday, praising a little boy. Hillary Clinton, I stand by it completely. Hillary Clinton praising a child for not standing for the national anthem. You have the DNC embracing groups like Occupy Wall Street that are burning the American flag in the streets. And then you have Barack Obama himself saying, yeah, America's exceptional just like the Greeks think that they are exceptional. Andrew Cuomo yesterday didn't flub anything. This is the pattern of Democrats over the past 10 years.
Wow.
And they're not out there saying how great America actually is. They're not talking about all the aid Americans are giving all over the world.
Yeah, but you're not Andrew Cuomo, and you're not aspiring to be the commander-in-chief, which is why I went to the military.
Hold on, Marie, I've got a question for you.
Barack Obama said it all the time.
To what Katie just said, then what do you make of the Gallup poll recently that found that only 3 in 10 Democrats are extremely proud of America, whereas you have 7 in 10 Republicans that are extremely proud of America? What would you make of that polling?
I think that's a reflection of how divided our country is.
But even under President Obama, the numbers still weren't as high as Republicans.
You want me to answer your question or not?
I am making sure that you're fully aware of the context of my question.
I am listening to your question, Lisa. Believe me, okay? I think that is a indication of how divided our country is. And it's Democrats saying they don't like the direction policies in this country are taking under this president.
And I just mentioned, though, the numbers still were not as high as Republicans.
I'm telling you what I think,
Obama.
Lisa. And I think that the accusation that Democrats are unpatriotic and putting Barack Obama in that list, Katie, you and I are friends. I am so offended by what you just said. We can say this country has more work to do.
Do you think that standing for the national anthem is a patriotic act or not?
I think that.
Yes or no?
I think that.
Yes or no?
Katie,
is it a patriotic act or not?
I think that the highest form of patriotism is protest. It's how our country was founded.
Or serving in the military, which Andrew Cuomo clearly
or serving in the CIA like I did, and I would love for you to come to DC and serve in the government too.
It is Friday, the 17th of August of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. That's right. Well, we got the French 77s all set up here, and hey, why don't I give you the recipe for the very, very well-balanced and infamous French 77 cocktail. It's not quite like the French 75 because there's a small difference, and I'll give it to you in just a moment. Now, a lot of people think this is just a drink for the new year. No, this is the drink of the resistance, and the resistance is every day. So I insist. And as I've mentioned before, it is the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. All right, you take 2 ounces of champagne or sparkling wine. Now, as far as champagne, I like Tattingers, so go get some. 1 ounce of gin. You can, I don't know, Tanqueray's fine. That's sort of like a nice middle-of-the-road commercial gin. Others would have something else. You get an ounce of gin, all right, and then a half ounce of Saint-Germain, which is elderflower liqueur. And they have other elderflower liqueurs, but the Saint-Germain is recommended. A half ounce of lemon juice, freshly squeezed now. All right, strain that baby. And a lemon twist garnish. Combine the gin, the Saint-Germain, and lemon juice in a shaker with ice. Shake well and strain into a chilled coupe. Top with the champagne, and then garnish with a lemon twist. All right, you got that? Get the gin, the Saint-Germain, and the lemon juice in the shaker. Don't shake the champagne. You'll take all the bubbles out of it. Don't do that. Top it with the champagne. Get that lemon twist on there. Enjoy. Okay. Well, that was Mary Harf on the top there with Fox Outnumbered. Boy, they sure like to talk over people, don't they? Don't they know that, when more than one person is talking at one time on the radio or TV, it just becomes a jumbled mass? Yes, they do. Especially if there's a liberal Democrat on. Even worse, if there's a liberal Democrat on from the Obama administration. You got to make all that a garbled mess. Well, it's particularly rich when Fox is talking about patriotism. Patriotism. And here's Mary Harf. Served in the CIA, served with this distinction in the Obama administration of the State Department, the Defense Department. But she, all Democrats, even Obama, are unpatriotic. And yet, we got the Russian stooge in the White House right now, as, the guy who never, ever seen any kind of battle. Well, military battle. Went to a military-themed school, because actual military schools wouldn't have him. He's patriotic. Oh, stand for the flag. Yeah, that's the show of patriotism. See, this is what they're all about. It's all image, no substance. You go through the motions, but you don't do any of the work. You don't have to. Just show up. Make it look like you're doing something. That's all they are about. And then when it comes to actual leading, yeah, they're the whimpering little Corporal Ophens over in the corner, letting the Nazi go up and stab the only Jewish guy in the platoon. All right. I know I make a lot of allusions to pop culture and movies and whatnot, but that's what we do here. It's a salon at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. What do we have on the rest of the menu today? Well, in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, we'll continue with an Arizona high school that called the cops on a black student, forget this, wearing a white and blue bandana, when most of the white kids were wearing American flag bandanas instead. Now, of course, desecrating the flag by putting it on your head as a bandana is actually a violation of the flag code, but they arrested the black kid instead. Yep. Federal guards demanded a New York couple change out of their Abolish ICE shirts at the Statue of Liberty, then kicked them out when they said, "This is America." No, it's not anymore, apparently, especially at the Statue of Liberty. And the Portland, Oregon police chief bragged to a right-wing radio host that cops kicked the butts of anti-racist protesters. Not not the fascists, not the Patriot Prayer neo-Nazis. No, they didn't. They protected them, actually. But they kicked the butts of the anti-racists. Mm-hmm. After the break, we moved to the chef's table, where the Russian mob used cash from a multi-billion-dollar gas scam to get their hooks into Trump, going back to at least 1984. I told you. And Trump got into a bizarre fight with Vietnam vets over the movie Apocalypse Now. Yeah, it's over the Duvall character, and they're arguing about what Duvall said on the beach. It's right there on the film. But no, Trump decided Duvall said something entirely different, and he's not going to listen to anybody because he's Donald Trump. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link on the rightish of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Now, she is still tweaking the settings on the hardware and software that she's gotten on. I don't think it's a new device, but the devices that she has left. And so she may not be there as much as she normally is, but there is always someone in the chat room link, so do engage there. You will, if you will, gaze to the leftish of the page there. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute, donate buttons, and thank you for your generosity. We are unable to do this without you, and that generosity of yours keeps these lights a-blinking in their proper order. And that's the way we like it. And that's the way the world likes it, too. And also, we pay our bills. That's what that means. And we're not like, the grifters in the White House. We pay our bills. Yes, we do. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. How easy is that? Tom takes care of that platform. Thanks, Tom. Kelly and I take care of the Facebook page. I post some things there, but Kelly takes care of it. And really, when it gets down to it, like I keep saying, Zuckerberg does what Zuckerberg wants to do. That's just the way Zuckerberg is. So, out of our hands. It's okay. We're still there. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Do check out the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes that I post about 10 minutes before showtime. An integral part to the show, actually. It's not quite like homework, but it has a little bit of entertaining salon value. Mm-hmm. That's right. You can follow the show on Twitter. And write this down because it's not West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. That'd be too long to put on a Twitter handle, apparently, because they gave me at Cookbook West. Okay? Just start typing in West Coast Cookbook and you'll come up with at Cookbook West. You can check us out on Facebook. Our page there is West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Okay. Good for that. Please do check out the podcast because not everyone can listen at this time of day, wherever you are in the world. So pick up podcasts of the show by way of TuneIn, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. Okay. We better get on with this story about this kid in Arizona. I'm always amazed at what people think they can get away with. But I don't know. He was a new kid, and maybe they were just trying to teach him, the lay of the land. School officials at Apache Junction High School in Arizona are facing complaints and student protests after the school had police officers arrest a black student who is new to the school for wearing a bandana on campus. That tells part of the story. The 17-year-old, identified only as Valentino, was on his way to lunch when a teacher told him to take the bandana off, saying it was against the school's dress code. Well, when the teen refused, police were summoned. No, don't take him to the principals. No, call the cops. What the hell is that how they do it in high school? Apparently they do that at high schools. Yeah, I know, they got cops on campus. Oh, they're not called cops on campus. They're resource officers. Yeah, right. Well, the police were summoned as a crowd gathered, wondering what the fuss was about, and the teen was grabbed by the police and removed from the campus in handcuffs. Now, of course, according to other kids that were there, they said that a lot of the white kids were wearing bandanas in a similar fashion for months. Except theirs were red, white, and blue flag bandanas. But he was singled out by a teacher. I told the teacher that I would remove the bandana if the others did too. She said, if you don't remove it, I will call the police. I said, if you need to call them, you should. And I walked back to my lunch table. He's a kid. Call the cops. I mean, are you really going to call the cops to tell me to take off my white and blue bandana when these fools are desecrating the flag right now with red, white, and blue? But you're not telling them to take off their bandana? The red, white, and blue bandanas are a part of the dress code? Well, actually, the wearing of bandanas is not a violation of the school dress code. But once again, we got a person of authority thinking that if no one complies with their authority, then they have to suffer grave consequences. It's not about what is right. It is not about what is the rules. It's about my authority. You do what I say. You do it now. You're a brat, and you're going to get spanked if you don't do what I say. And that's what they're doing here. When I asked the officer what was wrong with my bandana, he said it's blue and white. And other people have ruined that color. Oh, really? You mean like the Crips? Or is that the Bloods? No, it's the Crips. I pointed to a student wearing a bandana with the American flag, and he said, well, that's for America. So here we have another person of authority who actually doesn't know that desecrating the flag by wearing it as an article of clothing is actually codified. But apparently, ignorance of the law is quite an excuse for a cop these days. Not for you, mind you. In fact, according to this story, knowledge of the law is just a flimsy excuse to get you to deny my authority. The refusal to respond to a reasonable request escalated to a point where some students were confusing the wearing of the bandana with defiance and disorderly behavior, a school official said in a statement. This particular situation became escalated when students posted videos on social media. It's not about making students or anyone follow the rules. This is all about complying with authority. The defiance this student showed by mocking the American flag bandana wearing students with his simple white and blue bandana must not stand. And Valentino is now serving a 9-day suspension. That was the great T-Bug, Tom Bogiani, on Raw Story, who brought us that first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And now we have Noor Al-Sabai bringing us, also of Raw Story, bringing us to the next offering. And I want to mention, I got a little caught up and failed to mention Aretha Franklin's passing yesterday, and I almost forgot to mention it today, so I am mentioning it now. From my brief foray into the music business, traveling around on a few stadium tours with the rock group I was affiliated with when I was like a kid, 19, 20 years old. And then my small little stuff in LA and I played around a few festivals in Europe and whatnot, and here in America too. But regardless, and just small venues, okay, clubs, none of the stadium tour stuff I had when I was with Cottonmouth. But what I learned is that the music business is rife with criminality. And I'm talking about mob criminality. And Aretha Franklin just would not stand for that. She was one act, and she's more than an act. Okay, that's the first thing. She wasn't an act. I really think it's because of her coming out of the gospel genre that she didn't brook any of that mob stuff. So that's why she was able to say no amount of money would ever let me sing for that guy, Donald Trump, ever, in spite of the fact that Trump says, oh, yeah, she worked for me a few times. No, she never worked for you. All right. Let's get in with the story that we have here by Noor Al-Sabai. A pair of New Yorkers wearing Abolish ICE shirts were turned away by federal agents at the Statue of Liberty, who demanded they either change out of their shirts or leave. Well, I don't know. I might have argued that really Abolish ICE is that we're just against ice and drinks. People should have it chilled, not with ice in it. No one else in the world puts ice in their drinks. We're the only ones that do. The Gothamist reported that last month, Tiffany Wong and her fiancé went to the monument wearing the homemade shirts to, quote, acknowledge the symbolism of visiting the Statue of Liberty, end quote. Oh, okay. I think they might be an identifiable racial group. At least one of the partners there is. Maybe that's what cut their eye too. 2 and 2 equals kick them out. We did not have any plans for any other sort of action, she said, just exercising our right to free speech, kind of like wearing I Love New York, get out of my face, mofo. Wearing one of those T-shirts. You get them right there at Times Square. When they arrived at the dock to take their tour, the ferry to the island to take their tour ferry to the island housing the statue, they were first stopped by one guard and approached by another who told them they could either remove the shirts or leave. A second security person came over to tell us that he couldn't let us on the tour with our shirts. He said it was our choice to either change or put on clothes over our T-shirts or leave. So we said, well, we'll leave. And another security person walked us back through security. The woman said that the guard cited what happened on July 4th. That was when that activist scaled the statue following an Abolish ICE protest as the reason behind the decision. Wong and her partner contacted the New York Civil Liberties Union after the incident, who then reached out to the National Park Service about what happened. Through the New York Civil Liberties Union, the agency said federal guards turning the pair away was a misstep and a form of viewpoint discrimination that should have never happened. Wait until Trump hears about that. Whoever issued that statement from the Park Service, I think they're going to get their security clearance yanked, too. up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Is another offering by Noor Al-Sabai from Raw Story. During an interview with a conservative talk radio show, Portland Police Chief Danielle Outlaw bragged about kicking the butts of leftist counter-protests at a far-right rally. Now, I should mention that Danielle Outlaw is the first female black police chief that Portland has had. But I should also add, everybody needs to know this. Oregon used to be white utopia. The Constitution forbid blacks and others of dubious color from living here. You could come to work, get exploited, but you got to get out. All right? And because of that, in spite of Oregon's, leftist image, and Portland being Portlandia, it's pretty racist and white. Let's be clear, okay? And I believe that Ms. Outlaw, is appealing to the municipality that is hiring her, possibly. I don't know. Let's look. Willamette Week reported that Outlaw used a schoolyard fight analogy to describe the department's treatment of counter-protesters at the Patriot rally, or the Patriot Prayer rally, in an interview with right-wing host Lars Larson. So, yeah, that gives you a clue right there. I tell you, meet me after school at 3 o'clock, right? We're going to fight, the police chief said. And I come with the intention to fight, and then you get mad because I kicked your butt, and then you go back and you wail off and whine and complain. I think what she's talking about is that the protesters, and they're calling them Antifa, whatever that means. Anti-fascist, anti-racist, there's something bad about that. Multiple people were seriously injured during the Patriot Prayer counter-protest after Portland police launched flashbang grenades, pepper spray, and rubber bullets at the anti-fascist demonstrators. And video shows the Portland Police Department storming the crowd upon realizing that they left 2 squad cars behind. They attacked the counter-protesters because they forgot 2 squad cars. And they figured, we better get them. Somebody might torch them. Yeah, that's the kind of thinking they had. And now they're saying, well, the counter-protesters said they were going to come and counter-protest, and we kicked their butts. That's what we're here for, apparently. All right, we better get to our break. And when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world, and then we're going to finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, a dramedy in 2 acts. Blindspotting is one of the few films that lives up to the label dramedy. It's co-written by the leads Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal, who stars lifelong friends Colin and Miles. The story picks up during the final 3 days of Colin's probation for an earlier crime. On the first day, he witnesses a police shooting of an unarmed man, which leaves him shaken but determined to get through the probation and go on with his life. Unfortunately, Miles, despite his genuine love for his friend, isn't quite as determined. The 2 men work together for a moving company and spend lots of time driving around Oakland, a place where they both grew up but no longer recognize. The question isn't if Oakland is gentrifying, but rather how rapidly and whether there will still be room for people like Colin and Miles. One scene portrays the men stopping at a local convenience store and discovering they now sell $10 bottles of supposedly healthy green juice. When we later learn what originally landed Colin in prison, we see that all hipster encounters are not so comical. Blind spotting, a term coined by Colin's ex-girlfriend who is studying psychology, refers to the phenomenon of seeing a single two-dimensional form that can be easily perceived as either of two very different things. The vase versus two human profiles example is used here symbolically. In Colin's case, his record and blackness make it impossible for people to overlook his criminal past, whereas for Miles, his whiteness makes it a challenge for him to be seen as authentic, despite being as much a part of Oakland's culture as Colin. Blind spotting is one of the best of 2018 so far. It's powerful, well done, and is as relevant as films get.
This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and beat us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Every winter, huge hordes descend upon the parking lots of big box stores. I'm not talking about Black Friday shoppers, but crows. There's videos of them all over YouTube.
There, as you can see, they're in the trees. They're on the rooftop over there. And it's like Hitchcock's The Birds.
So sometimes they're 4,000, 10,000, even 20,000 birds in these flocks.
Andrea Townsend is a behavioral ecologist at Hamilton College in New York.
They're really noticeable because what they like are urban areas. So you'll see them in well-lit urban parking lots. That's sort of their favorite place to spend the winter.
Crows, she says, are what's known as partial migrants. Every year, some members of the population migrate between breeding grounds and their overwintering grounds, like parking lots. But others just stay put. So Townsend and her colleagues wanted to know if that urge to migrate was something individual crows can turn on and off. To find out, they captured 18 crows from overwintering spots in California and New York. They fitted the birds with little backpack satellite tags and tracked them for several years. Overall, 3/4 of the birds migrated, an average of 300 miles. And more importantly, if they migrated once, they did it every year, suggesting traveling is not a habit they switch on and off. The researchers also found that migrating crows returned faithfully to the same breeding grounds every year, but they were more flexible on where to overwinter, which could be a good thing.
Birds with these flexible strategies can change their behavior when the environment changes, whereas other birds and other migratory species are sort of locked into their overwintering sites. And those birds might not be able to adjust as quickly or as easily to changing environmental conditions like climate change.
The study is in the journal The Auk Ornithological Advances. Next, Townsend wants to investigate whether migration is a mental trade-off for the birds, since migrants have to keep all that location data in mind.
So maybe it's not as good as solving problems as a resident bird that doesn't have to invest so much in long-term memory.
Then again, with all that time on the wing, migrants simply may not have as much free time to puzzle over problems. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Come to the forest. It's a place not so far away. A place where you don't have to mow the lawn or babysit. A place where you don't have to make time for free time. Where you can cool down in one of nature's swimming pools. Come meet bugs and birds. You may even meet the mysterious creature known as the other you. The silly you. The adventurous you. The curious you. Ask your parents to take you to this not-so-far-away place. Come to the forest, where the other you lives. But first, stop by discovertheforest.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The American founders drew on a number of basic ideas and experiences to create the kind of government they believed would best protect the natural rights of Americans and promote the common good. The founders were influenced by classical Greek and Roman writers, natural rights philosophy, the Bible, Protestant theology, European history, and the Enlightenment. The American founders came from different backgrounds and had a wide variety of experiences. The founders included George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, John Adams, Abigail Adams, Thomas Jefferson, George Mason, Alexander Hamilton, Mercy Otis Warren, and many others. They had differing ideas about society and government. This diversity fostered a rich dialogue about the purpose of government and how it should be organized. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
A dozen of the nation's former intelligence officials have slammed Donald Trump's decision to revoke former CIA Director John Brennan's security clearance, claiming the president is trying to, quote, stifle free speech. MSNBC's Willie Geist says more.
It's a new reporting from the Washington Post that President Trump feels emboldened by stripping ex-CIA Director John Brennan of his security clearance. Trump believes he's emerged looking strong and decisive in his escalating feud with Brennan, 2 aides are telling the Post, adding the president shows a visceral disdain for the former CIA director when he sees him on television. White House officials say Trump did not focus on his power to remove clearances until this summer. White House aides confirmed that Trump made his decision weeks ago about Brennan, who serves as an NBC News contributor. Senior advisors, including Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, recommended to the president that they announce the action Wednesday amid the onslaught of news coverage about former aide Omarosa Manigault Newman's new book, which accuses President Trump of having made racist remarks, among other things. CIA Director Gina Haspel is remaining silent about the treatment of her predecessor. Asked if Haspel approved of Trump stripping Brennan of his security clearance and if she'd known about it or advised the president on the issue in advance, CIA spokesman Tim Barrett told the Daily Beast only CIA does not comment on individual security clearances. But 12 former top intel officials, including CIA Directors Webster, Tenet, Goss, Hayden, Panetta, and Petraeus, signed a letter that states this: we feel compelled to respond in the wake of the ill-considered and unprecedented remarks and actions by the White House regarding the removal of John Brennan's security clearances. And we all agree that the president's action regarding Brennan and the threats of similar action against other former officials has nothing to do with who should and who should not hold security clearances, and everything to do with an attempt to stifle free speech. You don't have to agree with what Brennan says, the letter goes on, and again, not all of us do, to agree with his right to say it, subject to his obligation to protect classified information. This comes after former Navy Admiral William McRaven, who oversaw the raid that killed Osama bin Laden, wrote a public letter challenging the president to revoke his security clearance. McRaven writes that Brennan is one of the finest public servants I've ever known. Few Americans have done more to protect this country than John. Therefore, I would consider it an honor if you would revoke my security clearance as well, so I can add my name to the list of men and women who have spoken up against your presidency. If you think for a moment that your McCarthy-era tactics will suppress the voices of criticism, you are sadly mistaken. The criticism will continue until you become the leader we prayed you would be. Again, that's from Admiral McRaven, directed at the President of the United States.
Trump is reportedly hoping to revoke additional clearances, believing the revenge makes him look strong. Just hours after reports surfaced Thursday saying that Trump's military parade, planned for November 10th, was estimated to cost $92 million, that's $80 million more than initially estimated, the Pentagon announced that the parade has been postponed until 2019. Jurors in the trial of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort ended their first day of deliberations by asking the judge a set of questions regarding the defense, including a definition of reasonable doubt.
After almost 7 hours of deliberations, the jury knocked on the door. The court security officer went in, came out with a piece of paper, and it turns out the jury has 4 questions. One of them relates to the requirement to file notice that Manafort had foreign bank accounts. They asked very specific questions related to the elements of that charge. They also asked a question about what is required for Manafort on some of the tax charges he faces. They asked the judge also for a definition of reasonable doubt. And then another question, they wanted some help indexing the exhibits to the indictments. Now, the judge told the jury that they had to rely on their recollection for all of these counts, all these questions that they had. But he did tell them for reasonable doubt. He told them that it did not mean beyond possible doubt. So that was the only real affirmative instruction that the judge gave to the jury. And the jury notified the judge they were going to break today at 5:30, and they'll return tomorrow morning and pick up deliberations where they left off. But they're not getting any real additional information. The judge is telling them they need to rely on their memory, and they need to rely on the testimony of the witnesses and the documents that they have as exhibits.
Omarosa Manigault Newman on Thursday unveiled a third secret recording, this one featuring Laura Trump, Eric Trump's wife, discussing details of a job offer on the Trump campaign that would require the former White House aide to remain publicly positive about the president. For this, she'd be paid $15,000 a month. According to the New York Times, Manigault Newman may have as many as 200 tapes. The publisher behind Newman's book has dismissed, quote, hollow threats by Trump's lawyers, saying being embarrassed by a book does not amount to a legal claim. The undisputed Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, died Thursday after a battle with pancreatic cancer. Tributes to Aretha dominated the airwaves throughout the day. Fox News honored the life and career of Aretha Franklin with an image of singer Patti LaBelle. They then flubbed the apology by lying about the mix-up. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your world in 2 minutes. The Afghan wing of the Islamic State says it was responsible for a suicide bombing in Kabul on Wednesday that claimed the lives of 34 students. The majority of those targeted in the attack were members of a Shiite Muslim sect, while the ranks of the Islamic State are largely populated by Sunni Muslims. Although both Shiite and Sunni clerics have tried to smooth over sectarian rifts following previous instances of intercommunal violence, it's believed the Islamic State is trying to turn Afghan religious communities against one another, and by doing so, the terror group hopes to boost Sunni recruits. It's a prospect that can't be written off. A UN report earlier this week shed new details on the increasing Islamic State presence in Afghanistan, noting that while the flow of fresh IS recruits to Iraq and Syria has largely stopped, new fighters continue to arrive in Afghanistan from Europe, North Africa, Russia, and Central Asia. Various reports place the number of Islamic State fighters in Afghanistan between 3,000 and 4,000, including an increasing number of senior commanders who fought alongside the terror group in Iraq and Syria. The Islamic State is competing with the Taliban for parts of Afghan territory and has set itself apart through its use of brutal public punishments, including beheadings. Days ago, the Afghan army, with help from U.S. warplanes, retook the town of Ghazni from the Taliban. But while the town is back under government control, the Taliban siege was a powerful display of force. Senior commanders say it was meant to send a signal the group can strike wherever and whenever it pleases. As the U.S. encourages the Afghan military to withdraw from hotly contested rural areas, it's likely the Taliban presence will grow in the coming years. Combined with the ever-present risk of suicide attacks in Afghan cities by the Islamic State, it seems the situation in the country is likely to get worse before it gets better. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us to the chef's table here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we always begin the weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River on the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit. How is it that cool? But it is. It's very nice. Forecast says we're going to be nearly the same as yesterday. And they say that we're going to have a high today of maybe 92, 93, and that's about right. That's about what we had yesterday. And I have to confess, after having triple digits in temperature, 89 to 92 felt fairly cool. Fairly. Right now, winds are out of the southwest at about 1 mile per hour. They, of course, will pick up a few hours from now to their usual 5 to 10 miles per hour. And they will have shifted, let's see. Okay, yeah, they're going to shift out of the north. They're going to shift from the north-northwest. And that will be at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We'll have overnight lows tonight of around 61, similar to what we had last night. Winds will continue out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and it looks like they'll be out of the north tomorrow, continuing at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Well, that's very nice. Looks like I have an active air quality alert currently right now. I don't have actual data on parts per million, but just from looking at the color of the sun, it looks like it's probably about moderate to unhealthy. So, not dangerous by any means. It's workable. Okay, people who have breathing diseases, like my elderly mom, probably should still take care. Grass pollen, though, is low, and the daytime UV index is just at high rather than very high, because it is now at 7. Very interesting. High pressure dominates the region still, and pressure is rising at 30.08 inches. Boy, it better not rise anymore. Visibility is at 6 miles. There is some mist in the sky mixed with the smoke. Relative humidity is at 73%, and it could stay there and be a bit muggy, as it has been. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. They do. London is 72 and partly cloudy. Paris is 77 and sunny. Wow, that sounds rather nice. Rome is 78 and partly cloudy. They continue to have their thunderstorm and electrical storm active advisory. Active right now as I speak. And that could kick out critical infrastructure like the electrical grid. Kiev is 84 and fair. Kabul is 84 and fair. Not a good day or weekend for a wedding party. The drones will be heavy. Hong Kong is 78 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 73 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 50 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 56 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 85 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And there is an active heat warning because you're going to get really hot. But, as I've said before, there's nothing cooler than a New Yorker. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Travis Geddes of Raw Story brings us this first offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. And please have another French 77. No more than 2, all right? Trust me. You will, you'll be tipsy. Donald Trump got to start laundering money for the Russian mob more than 30 years ago as part of one of the biggest scams in U.S. history, according to a new book. Investigative reporter Craig Unger has described Trump Tower as a cathedral to money laundering, and his new book, House of Trump, House of Putin, examines the depth of Trump's relationship with the Russian mafia, which he says he has no meaningful distinction from the country's intelligence agencies. And that's Craig Unger who has made that. And we have too. Unger traces the links between Trump and the Russian mob back to at least 1984, when a Soviet refugee, David Bogatin, was looking for a place to stash the millions he was raking in from a gasoline tax scam he was running with the Colombo crime family. That scam, the largest of its kind in American history, was busted up by federal investigators as part of Operation Red Daisy, which resulted in the indictment of 15 Russian nationals and 10 others for evading more than $140 million in fuel excise taxes. Gee, I wonder how many FBI agents and others were part of that investigation that he's kicking out of the Russian investigation. And let's also be clear, these security clearances being revoked is not retaliation against critics. It truly is retaliation and witness tampering. He's going after the witnesses. Bogatin and 2 associates, Michael Markowitz and Lev Persitz, approached Michael Francesi, the son of a notorious underboss in the Columbia organization, in 1980, asking for protection for their own network of sketchy gas stations. These Russians were having trouble collecting money owed them, Francesi later recalled. They were also having problems obtaining and holding on to the licenses they needed to keep the tax scam going. Francesi, the son of mob enforcer John Sonny Francesi, was not initially impressed by the Russians, but agreed to work for them in exchange for 75% of their take in the scheme. The lopsided deal proved spectacularly successful for both sides, as profits soared to $100 million a month and more than $1 billion a year. But the conspirators needed a place to launder their ill-gotten cash. After 7 years in New York, Bogatin had stashed away enough money to buy real estate anywhere he wanted. For roughly a decade, thousands of Russian Jews like him had been pouring into Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. But Bogatin had his eyes on something more prestigious. Bogatin became fixated on a garish 58-story building that had opened a year before, Trump Tower, and he paid $6 million in cash from his fuel tax scheme for 5 apartments there. Unger tracked more than 1,300 similar cash transactions at Trump Tower over the next 3 decades, involving mobsters that ensnare the future president in the closely tied web of Russian spies and mobsters. Russian mafia and Russian intelligence operatives successfully targeted, compromised, and implemented either a willfully ignorant or an inexplicably unaware Russian asset in the White House as the most powerful man on earth. In doing so, without firing a shot, the Russians helped put in power a man who immediately began to undermine the Western alliance, Unger continued, which has been the foundation of American national security for more than 70 years, who would then start massive trade wars with America's longtime allies, fuel right-wing anti-immigrant populism, and assault the rule of law in the United States.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
I love how petty this guy, Donnie, Two Scoops Trump is. He's just so petty about absolutely everything, and he's absolutely right about everything. And Brad Reed brings us this last offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A new report from the Daily Beast claims that Donald Trump got into a bizarre argument last year during a meeting with Vietnam veterans over the classic war movie Apocalypse Now. According to the Daily Beast, the meeting between Trump and several Vietnam veterans was arranged by a strange former aide, Omarasa, who at the time served as a liaison between Trump and veterans organizations. During the meeting, a dispute broke out over whether Robert Duvall's character in Apocalypse Now used napalm or Agent Orange against Viet Cong forces. Apparently, Trump falsely believed it was Agent Orange that U.S. forces used against the enemy, despite the fact that the movie's single most famous line of Duvall's character is saying, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." It's not, "I love the smell of Agent Orange in the morning." He didn't say that. He said, "I love the smell of napalm. It smells of, victory." Multiple people, including Vietnam War veterans, chimed in to inform Trump that the Apocalypse Now set piece he was talking about showcased the U.S. military using napalm, not Agent Orange. Trump refused to accept that he was mistaken and proceeded to say things like, "No, I think it's that stuff from that movie." One veteran who was present at the meeting described it to the Daily Beast as really effing weird. That's the assessment. All right, well, we've come to the end of our broadcast period for the day, the week also, and we'll be back on Monday for River City Hash Mondays, of course. But the Kavanaugh nomination is still in its explosive aspects, the security clearances and all that coming out. There's a lot of breaking news on Netroots Radio, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio today and throughout the weekend. And we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.